Kevin Steen. You're watching the Gorilla Report. Subscribe to his YouTube. What is it? YouTube channel? Is that how you say it? I don't know. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, or I will sign a live full-grown gorilla to your house. Do we have full-grown gorillas?
Yeah, we can get them arranged.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
I got zoo connections.
Yeah, you have.
Subscribe.
Welcome, folks, to the latest edition of the Gorilla Report. My name is Ollie Harper, and we are back for another instalment of the latest professional wrestling talk show, which comes to you every single Friday night here on YouTube.com. Now, this week, guys, we have got another absolutely packed show, because you know what we're doing this week? We're going to get straight into part 2 of the C.W. Anderson interview. You know, I've had some great response off part 1. People have been messaging me saying they really enjoyed part 1 of the interview, and I just thought, you know what, this week we're just going to get straight on with the interview. I'm not going to beat around the bush. We're just going to get straight into it this week. I just want to announce that in terms of next week's show of the Gorilla Report is going to be going out on Thursday evening, because Friday night I have got another arrangement and I'm not going to be anywhere near my laptop. So check out the new episode should be up at some point next Thursday night in terms of next week's Gorilla Report. Now, in terms of who's coming to the Gorilla Report, well, for next week's show is going to be this gentleman. He's coming next week.
What does everybody want? What does everybody need? What does everybody love?
Alright, folks, we are back on the Gorilla Report, and it is now part 2 of the C.W. Anderson interview. Now, of course, where we left off last week, we were talking about his time in ECW, working for the hardcore promotion, also working in ROH, but now, part 2, let's talk about Japan, Chris. How was Japan for you?
Unbelievable. It was a place that my very first day, I hated it. Then give it a few days, started like, okay, I can accept this, and then it got to the point where, man, I can't wait to go back. The wrestling, really, really tough. I always compared, especially 0-1. 0-1's called a strong style company, which means, to me, the way I explain it was, it's a cross between UFC and pro wrestling. It's one of those where people think it's entertainment, and until you get there and work with them guys, man, they're tough over there. It was rough in the beginning because I didn't speak the language, couldn't read the signs, even still can't read the signs to today. Didn't know where I was going. And after a few weeks, a few months, learned the language, started learning my way around. It was, Steve Carino was going with me. We always, get up in the morning, go to McDonald's, get breakfast, do something else. And, if we didn't have to wrestle, we were at a, internet cafe or going to an arcade, doing something. He and I would just go walking. And it was interesting. I got a bunch of pictures. I put a bunch on my Facebook of my past travels and things like that. So I love Japan. It was one of my most favorite places. And then Carino and I were talking last week that how much we miss Japan and miss everybody over there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of wrestlers always do try and get going to Japan on their resume at some point in their career. Of course, you went over there. You got any really good memories? Any really good memories you'd like to share?
Let's see. There's a bunch of stuff that Steve and I did together. I guess the one that I won't get into is the one I'm most known for. People call it the greatest wrestling story in the business. If you can YouTube it, it's C.W. Anderson's sex story. You can go and relive that. It's 100% true, even though it looks made up. It was sometimes I wish I could think like that and make it up. Steve and I, the one night I think we're in Hokkaido, and it's myself, Steve, Josh Daniels, Loki, Samoa Joe. There's a bunch of guys, a bunch of Americans over there, and we get in a water balloon fight in a hotel. And, we're grown-ass men getting in a water balloon fight where they actually called the police. And we go down to a festival where there's like 10,000 people at this festival, 100. I mean, it's huge. And we end up throwing Josh Daniels in this pool or this water fountain, and he's throwing water balloons. I mean, we were like big kids. But we stayed up about 3 or 4. It got to a point where Loki's a very intense individual, loved the guy to death. He got to the point where he got pissed off and was putting hot water and soap in these water balloons, busting these people's faces and their eyes. He got a little crazy with it. But it's like always something that we was always one sport or something happening one time or another. And just to segue in, Steve Carino and I did a shoot interview with this group, and, if you contact me on Facebook and want to buy it and sell it. But we talk stories of Japan and the baseball story, where he and I go, and everybody knows how good of a baseball player I was and still have a very strong arm at 42 years old. And of course, at the time I was 35, 36 when the story took place, and pitching against a little league team and pitching against a coach, and that's a great story too. So there's always some memories. But it's something, of course, I can't talk about, but still.
That's absolutely fine. And in terms of the one of the the greatest wrestling stories ever told, it is on YouTube. You just put in C.W. Anderson interview, and you'll find it on there. I'm not gonna. I think the people watching this may have already probably seen it by now. So
they probably have it. It's something to go watch. And, I literally not trying to tell that story with my wife. I mean, she's heard me tell it when we first started dating, and she just shakes her head. She's like, I couldn't have been with you.
It's like a face palm right there.
Yes.
So let's touch on MLW. Of course, another independent wrestling promotion in the United States. A lot of people always thought MLW had like a hardcore feel about it. A lot of people, of course, Joey Styles even worked down there for a little bit. I mean, what was going to somewhere like MLW, which did feature quite a couple of the guys that were a part of the ECW family. Going down to MLW 2005. So talk me through that. And, going back to a place that really had that sort of ECW-esque about it.
It was. Court Bauer ran MLW, and that was one of mine and Steve's another favorite place. I wish it was still going. And he called it hybrid wrestling. He had a lot of young talent. Your Low Keys, your Sanjay Dutt, guys like that. CM Punk started there too. Then he had us, the Extreme Horsemen, Steve, myself, Barry Windham, Simon Diamond. It was just me, Simon, and Steve for a while. Yeah. And then he had the veterans like Terry Funk, Dr. Death, Steve Williams, Dusty Rhodes. He had such a collaboration of wrestlers. And I think, it lasted a couple years and stopped, but I think where Court's problem was, Court Bauer's group, he was out of New York, and most of the wrestlers lived up in New York, but he ran down in Florida, which he had to fly everybody, including the Japanese wrestlers. He had to fly everybody, and a lot of his money was tied up in flight. But some of the things I remember most about MLW was we were his top heels, the Extreme Horsemen were the top heels, and we outdrew, as the MLW and as us as the top heels, outdrew whatever ECW, when they ran down in Florida, we drew bigger crowds than what ECW did. And the thing I love was Raven told us, because Raven worked some with us too, that myself, Carino, and Simon, he didn't see us as top guys and that we couldn't really draw. And we used to love to stick it in his face that we were outdrawing when he was the top guy at ECW. We were outdrawing him. But Court pretty much let the Horsemen run wild, so to speak. He'd give us an idea, we'd run with it, come back to him. And the thing we never did was, like how the big names up in your TNA and your WWE, they never want to do the job. They never want to lose and not look strong, even if they're heel or face, and that's one of the downfalls. But us, we didn't care. He didn't beat us around. The heel always wins in the end, and that made it more interesting. We always beat Terry Funk up. We always beat Dusty Rhodes, and whoever it was, we'd jump and just destroy them. The thing was, Dr. Steve Williams kept looking for a partner, and it went from T.J. Freeman to D'Lo Brown to Sandman, and we just kept destroying them. And that was one of the things that made the people hate us that much more, is we'd give these arrogant interviews and go out and back it up. And in the end, they would finally get over all of it. Like at War Games, we did an MLW, which is on YouTube as well. They got their revenge by beating us up at War Games. And that's the whole premise of wrestling, that people don't, that some of these names don't understand. And I don't know why they didn't get it, but we didn't care because we knew it was for the business. It wasn't for the horsemen. It was better for the business.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, it's about what you know is going to progress the business and what is going to grow the business. So absolutely can agree with you there. And then of course in 2005 also, move to touch on a little bit also, WWE decides to get an ECW reunion show, of course, in New York City. One night stand. You was in attendance that night. Talk me through the call, getting the call and getting everybody back together for a pay-per-view.
Streamer called, got me booked. He said that night I was going to tag with Simon Diamond. With Johnny Swinger. I was going to wrestle Danny and Roadkill. We get to the building expecting to wrestle. Tommy tells us that they cut our match from pay-per-view for time, and they didn't want us. They wanted the bigger ECW names to be on the show. Your Benoit and Lance Storms and Chris Jericho, the former ECW guys. They wanted them on there, and they had more of the control. Was it really Tommy and Paul's baby?
Yeah.
So they said, well, CW, you're going to wrestle a singles match before the show. You're going to be dark. You're going to be a dark match. Then it went from being a singles match to not wrestling a match at all because they didn't want the crowd. They wanted them live as could be when the show went live. They didn't want a match going on and then be here and then down here. Which obviously Vince has no idea about the ECW crowd because it wouldn't matter if I was the first match. They would have went bananas anyway when the show would have come on. That's the idiocy of Vince McMahon for you. So then he said, Tommy goes, well, you can either sit in the back and wait till the run in or you can sit out front and watch the show. And I'm like, I guess I'll just sit out front. So me and Electra and Chris Chetty sit out front, and I got to keep one of those $400 chairs that people were paying for and I sold it on eBay. So it was just hard that I didn't get to wrestle that night, but yeah, it was a payday.
What was I want to ask you also, what was your thoughts on the WWE's idea of having ECW that night and having to bring in, their idea, bringing in, calling them the Crusaders, bringing in the Raw guys, the SmackDown guys, people like Gene Snitsky, Edge, Kurt Angle, Eric Bischoff, Maven, Rob Conway, just all obviously at the balcony. What was your thoughts on them having to do that storyline? In a lot of ways, did you ever feel that WWE had doubts that ECW couldn't have just gone on its own without having to have all these WWE guys on the pay-per-view as well?
Yeah, it's in Vince's mind that if the show was a success, it was because of the WWE guys. And, they would have been. He's never given ECW any credit, even when he brought the product back. He thinks that because of the WWE guys, the show was a success. None of those guys could have showed up at all in the show. I think the show would have been 10 times better than what it was without the WWE guys there because they added nothing to the show. Nothing against those guys, but they're just doing what they're told. I'm sure they'd rather sit at home and not be at the pay-per-view sitting there watching that. But if you'd have just been straight ECW, and that's where he messed up when he brought ECW back. You could have run an ECW in our smaller towns, kept us in smaller buildings, just like before. Not even let people know that you own it. Just run it a straight ECW. You'd have made a killing. But again, that's Vince McMahon. He's got to have all the power. I heard one time that he said that he was the reason people will chant at ECW. They give the ECW chant and chant USF that he created that.
That's crazy.
The guy has no clue. Yeah. But even when he brought it back, it was never brought back to honor ECW. It was brought back to run it in the ground to show that his company was much more powerful. He did. He had, even when he bought WCW, you could have run all these companies different. Never let people own that you own them all. And you'd have been making money hand over fist, but your ego kills you.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's another thing I want to talk about. So, of course, a lot of people, myself included, I mean, I would like to, of course, I got to see a little bit of the older ECW through buying videotapes off friends, getting them off market stalls. That was kind of how my way, because I mean, I live in the UK, and of course, it was only like after it had closed its doors that I was very much able to really get to check it out. A lot of the tapes got released on Delta UK, so that's kind of how I was able to check out the product. But when obviously ECW was revived by Vince, I was excited, and I was very much thinking, you know, hopefully it's going to have that grit, that same grittiness that was around in the original. And that first night, you was brought in, of course, for the new ECW, and of course that first night you had the Zombie. Was it the Zombie? You had Sandman, and of course you had guys like Big Show, and it was just a complete and you know, excuse my French, but it was a complete and utter clusterfuck. The whole thing from start to finish. I mean, really, what were your thoughts really on the revived ECW?
I had high hopes for it. Really, I did. You know, when Tommy called me and wanted to sign me, I was like, "Is this a joke?" And he was like, "No, it's really. They're bringing back ECW." He said, "Me and Paul have complete control. Vince has no control." Yeah. He said, "You're going to be one of my top heels again. We're going to pick back up on our feud. Blah blah blah." And I said, "So when I don't have to go to the Ohio Valley, you know, and train?" He said, "No." He said, "They're going to sign you, and you know, it was pretty much the base minimum." He said, "But your royalties at the end of the year will kick in, and you'll be making, you know, 6 figures easily, if not more." Yeah. So I was on board because I was going to get my spot back as the top heel. I was going to be feuding with Tommy again. It was going to be like Tommy's words were, "It's going to be like old times." And I said, "Well, on your word, I'm going to sign." So I signed with them, and after the very first night we did the ECW show at the ECW arena, and I worked Sabu. Vince took it over right after that, and it went downhill quick. It went to hell quick. As far as Big Show and Kurt Angle and those guys coming in, you know, think the world of Big Show, think the world of Kurt Angle. It was a place for them to work. You know, I didn't know Big Show was such a fan of my work until he and I sat down and talked one day. Kurt Angle was a big fan of my work, and which, you know, it was humbling to hear those guys say that they love my work. And it got to the point where I never wanted to be there. I hated getting the call that I had to go in, and once I found out I won't work at a show, Stevie Richards and I would leave and go somewhere else, go to the next town, because it was the worst year of my life, and I could never imagine being in that company again.
Were you there?
And then again, and you know, like again, Hurricane Helms and I are great friends, and we grew up together. And he said, you know, we're talking on the phone one night before it started. He said, you know, I really hope Vince ain't bringing this back to crush it, because ECW has a great legacy of everybody working so hard. That's what people mess up when they look at ECW as hardcore, it was extreme. Not only did we do some of the craziest things that, you know, WCW and WWE took from us, was our hardcore and our extreme was working 4 nights a week at that pace every night. Yeah. And most, you know, there was months at a time that I wasn't getting paid for it. You know, Paul was bouncing checks left and right for us, and we were still, you know, believing in the company, thinking it was going to do it. And, you know, how long can you wrestle at that level? Sure. And I think that's where the hard, Joey Styles said best, that's where hardcore and extreme, that's what it meant. Yeah. We're blood, sweat, tears. We were doing that every night for the fans, not getting paid. And as a little known fact, that my I Quit match I never got paid for. I never got one dime off that match.
Wow. God, that's wow! I actually never knew that. That's crazy. That I Quit match that you had on your birthday, you were not paid a dime for that.
Not one dime.
Wow, my God! But that's insane. But I must say, I never realized that. But never knew that. But so another thing I say touch on, of course, with ECW. Were you there? I'm trying to remember now. Were you there when, of course, they brought back, of course, they did the ECW December to Dismember event. Were you still there at that point? I can't even remember. Were you still there?
You'd gone. If they had done it, I don't think I was there. I never went to any once I signed, I never went to any of the little pay-per-views they did or anything like that. I never got to go to those. Yeah. Actually, no, I think I was there, but I wasn't on the show. I remember because they did. I think that's when Sabu and Ray did their match. Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't there. Now I got let go in January because I got hurt working Kevin Thorne in Oklahoma City, and once I got hurt, I said, you know what, I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, so and you know, and that's really it. I mean, the amount of ECW original guys that were leaving, and before you knew it, I mean, the only ECW guy, God bless him, Tommy Dreamer, he pretty much stuck round until the very end, and that just shows you right there. And then, of course, he retired at the, you know, on WWE programming. So a very you know, to show how much dedication is for Tommy Dreamer, wanting to really stick it out the whole way through. So you know, but so that's another thing I want to talk about now. Then, so of course. TNA, of course, TNA had their little shot at doing an ECW reunion show. They did TNA Hardcore Justice. Now, a lot of people, there's a lot of critics out there that very much say that the TNA Hardcore Justice pay-per-view wasn't very good. A lot of people were saying it just wasn't done right. You know, it just, for what it just was not done right. What were your thoughts really for the Hardcore Justice event that was all an ECW show?
From my part of it, there's things that could have been done better. There's guys, and that's where some of the fans, you know, you got to realize that it's 2010. It's 10 years after, you know, ECW shut down, and some of the guys can't go like they could and like they used to, and some of them weren't going to go at that because a lot of them knew it was a one-shot deal. I had high hopes for it because, you know, Tommy had his hands in it, and TNA had lightning in a bottle, man. You had, the way I looked at it, you had guys that could still go, myself, Too Cold Scorpio, Little Guido, you know, Tommy and Raven put on, you know, their stuff. But it got shut down with some of the guys there from our ECW clique really messed up in true ECW fashion, and Hogan and Bischoff took it over and pretty much shut Dreamer down because they were going to start running, you know, some shows quite regularly. And I was hoping that Scorpio and I would get something out of it because I think we had one of the best matches there that night, and I wish they could have continued. But again, you can't bring certain people back to do shows like this because they don't know how to conduct themselves. Yeah. And it proved that night things went on that, man, you just can't. Some guys just can't handle it. And again, it was 10 years later. Guys just can't go like they used to. Guys weren't going to go like they used to. And from my part, I got one of the best compliments that night that I had ever gotten from Cactus Jack McFoley. And he, you know, he even said it in one of his, he wrote a column about it. And he even told me that night, he said he's heard so much about me. He's heard so much hype about me. And that's the first time he's actually sat down and watched me work. And, you know, when I walked by him, he grabbed me and pulled me down, and he said, CW, he said, I want to let you know that the hype about you is true. He said, you are one hell of a talent. And working with Scorpio that night, he and I had another great match. I had worked him before. You know, I worked him at Francine Fournier show. It was a charity show, and that was the first time Too Cold and I had ever worked. And Too Cold told me in the back afterwards, he said, you know, I've only had chemistry with you. He said, I've had chemistry with two other guys like I had with you. He said, that's Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. Wow. He said, the chemistry I got with you, he said, it's something else. And he wanted to do a best-of-5 match with me and him, and I love working with Scorpio. Scorpio worked in Japan just as long, if not longer than I had, so everything we did was nice and snug, nice and stiff, but man, he's something else to work with. I love working with that guy.
Absolutely. Well, I want to ask you also, I actually was a couple of weeks back, I interviewed the owner of Combat Zone Wrestling, CZW, DJ Hyde. CZW, a lot of people like to compare CZW to ECW. Have you ever had chance to see Combat Zone Wrestling or ever seen the CZW product?
I've seen some of their product. You can't compare it to ECW. There's no comparison. Those guys are way over when it goes to the extreme stuff that just don't make sense with, you know, the lighting tubes and guys get hung up with fish hooks and stuff like that. It makes no bloody sense why they do some of the things they do. You can't compare ECW to anything. It's its own product. It's an original, and you can't duplicate it. Many people have tried. Yeah, and even when they keep bringing back these reunion shows, yeah, they're great. They're fun to be around, fun to see. It's an atmospheric thing, but you know, again, it's 12 years after the fact. How long can you do these shows? Because again, I keep saying this, that not every one of them can go like they did. I feel like I still can. Someone at wrestler said it looked like, you know, when I did Hardcore Justice, that I was frozen in a time capsule from 1999 and unthawed for that show. That I hadn't really changed much. Yeah. So, in CZW, I've seen the product. You know, the guys work hard, try hard, but if they get done too much, have respect for them doing the things they do, because I wouldn't go out there and do it. But you can't compare it to ECW.
Fair enough. couple of things. Going to start wrapping this up now. What's another thing? Of course, the Extreme Reunion shows, which Shane Douglas very much a part of in these last couple of years. Don't want to talk me through, and of course a very good name coming up in the Extreme Reunion shows is Luke Hawks. He's a very talented man. Let's talk about talk about Extreme Reunion. Like I say, a couple of the shows you've been working with them for the last couple of times.
Yeah, I worked on the first one. I worked Al Snow. Very disappointing match. Al didn't want to wrestle. He didn't want to do much there. I was actually looking forward to working with Al because I'd heard and seen great things with him, and I thought he and I could have a great match. But everything I kept throwing out at him, he kept shooting down, and to the point where I just said, "To hell with it, just go in there and do it." I wasn't happy with it. Was not happy with it at all. My talent was way better than what was showed that night. Yeah. Then they did it again, and for some reason they wanted me to be this Rhino type character, and I'm not freaking Rhino. Be this crazy, just over the top, aggressive Wolverine type person, and I'm not that. I'm slow. I'm methodical. I'm a tactician, and that's Rhino. You can't duplicate Rhino. Let him be that Wolverine type, just killer person. Worked Balls Mahoney the second time. Had fun working with Balls. Had fun doing the little thing with Sandman. Had fun with Manny being a part of it. But then they booked me for another one. Unbooked me. Booked me for the one after that. And then a week before, I said, "Hey, where's my flight info? Where's this? Where's that?" And they come back with, "Oh crap, we forgot to unbook you. Let me see if I can get you on the show." And I'm like, you know what? The hell with it. I don't ever want to work for these guys again. Very disorganized. And you have guys they brought in like Luke Hawks and things like that. Luke Hawks, great talent. This kid he's a great talent. Good look, great wrestler. Hope big things happen with him because Luke Hawks, and he's one of the guys you want to succeed because he's very genuine. He's very humble. He and I even spoke about doing some stuff together, and would love to work with Luke Hawks. But that's somebody you want to make it in this business.
Absolutely. I just want to say wrapping up also. You got any like final future projects you want to plug today, Chris?
This weekend the reunion when the Mega lives at Chapel Thrill with me and Matt Hardy. Again, Matt Hardy and I starred together. It's going to be a great because we've been putting it on Twitter and people think a lot of stuff is a work and Matt and CW really get along. We don't. Even though when I work Shane Helms, I respect Shane Helms as a wrestler, but when I get in the ring with him, my goal is to win. And even though I'll joke and carry on with you, when I get in there, it's just like this weekend, I'm going to punish Matt Hardy because there's so many things that's been said, the same things with me and Matt Hardy, and he's always called me a shooter and says I take advantages of people and things like that. I don't take advantage of you. You can't hang with me. You can't hang with me, point blank. And yeah, I might be a little bit of a shooter. I might be stiff, but that comes from the Japan style. And we're definitely going to see this weekend if Matt Hardy lives up to his name, Stronger Than Death, because he's never been one. He and I've never wrestled one-on-one. I've always wrestled with him and his brother, and against me and Steve Carino. Got a few more shows. WrestleCade, November 29th. If you Google search WrestleCade 2013.
It's cool. You okay?
I heard my dogs in the background fighting. I got two Rottweilers. So get ready to go break them up. Anyway, I got WrestleCade. Google search WrestleCade, and we're doing, me and Tommy Dreamer are doing I Quit 3. I beat him last weekend, 1-1. And they will have Magnum Tia, let me phrase that. Magnum Tia is going to be on the show, but they're going to have Justin Incredible as the referee. Yep. They're going to have J.J. Dillon in my corner with Steve Carino in my corner. I also got some stuff coming up with, if you follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/ECW Anderson, my Twitter name, ECW Anderson. Trying to work some things with my Christian faith, trying to head that way. If you follow Twitter, Strong Style Faith, it's a link to that as well. And I got some shows coming up next weekend. I'm working a show with Magnum TA, which I'm really looking forward to. But that's pretty much it. This weekend is my main focus with beating up Matt Hardy. So I think he and I are going to have a fight. He's one of the ones that started with, but it's for the first round of the Mega Heavyweight Championship, and we're going again. I will put him to the Stronger Than Death test, the man that won't die. So we'll see.
There you go. think that's a last minute way to get the tickets sold. Last minute promo right there from Mr. C.W. Anderson. Let's say one more thing I just want to quickly ask you. I've got a lot of guys that watch this show that are just getting into the business, that are in academies right now. What kind of advice would you give to these young guys that are, just breaking out? They want to be somebody in the business. They are still on academy shows. What kind of advice would you give to these young guys?
There's a few things. Always be first things first. Be your worst critic. Never be satisfied with your work. December 4th of this year makes 20 years I've been doing this, and I'm never satisfied with my matches. I always pick them apart, video your matches, give them to somebody that has been in the business that would watch them. Get trained by somebody that's actually done something. Don't go to a school where nobody's actually done anything, because most of the time, even though we're in the UK, the guys are just going to take your money. And you don't want to. You're never going to amount to much. You're never going to be promising. And don't go to route ideas, because it's changed. So much has changed. Don't go like I did. Get trained by somebody that is accredited. Learn. If you got, like around here in these areas, they do camps and schools and seminars for guys like, I just taught one a few weeks ago. I've seen Stevie Richards do them, Steve Carino, where they go and teach 10, 15 kids. If you can make everyone you can, and it's worth paying the money to learn. And even if you say, you go to a camp that I'm teaching, don't take everything I say as the gospel. I had to learn from somebody. These guys had to learn from somebody. You take everything in, bring a notebook and write things down, and take bits and pieces from each person and make it your own style. That's what I did. I took stuff from Bobby, Ivan Koloff, Jimmy Boogie Woogie, and Valiant, Dusty Rhodes, Wahoo. These guys, I sit down and pick their brain and don't learn about high-flying moves and things. The thing you want to learn about is wrestling psychology. If you can tell a story in wrestling, you can make money. You got to get the people interested in you.
That's it right there. That's it. I think that's a great way to really give a final message to all of the guys that are watching this, that are trying to be somebody in this business. You heard it there from a guy that has lived it. He still is living it at 42 years of age, Mr. C.W. Anderson. And I think that's on that final note. I just want to say a big, big, big thank you to C.W. Anderson for coming on the show today. It has been an absolute pleasure and an honor. I've really enjoyed this discussion, this two-part interview. It's been a 2-week special with an ECW original, C.W. Anderson. I just want to say thank you very much.
Certainly. Thanks for having me.
There you go. The famous hand pose as well to wrap it up. And I say, and that is that. So you have been watching the Gorilla Report, folks. We will be back next week. Keep on watching your professional wrestling. I'm out, guys. Have a great week.